Francesca Foster stepped into the grand ballroom of the Bellamy estate and immediately regretted wearing flats. The place was insane, massive crystal chandeliers dripping from a vaulted ceiling, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Hudson River, and gold trim on every edge of the white marble. Her boss, Vivienne, had tasked her with reviewing 3 venues for next month's luxury fundraiser, but this one practically screamed, "You can't afford to breathe here." Francesca tugged at her plain black blazer, trying to look more event coordinator and less overworked assistant. "I'm just here to take notes," she reminded herself under her breath as she walked across the smooth floor, heels clicking all around her that weren't her own. Then she nearly walked straight into a man. "Whoa, sorry," she said, stumbling back. He caught her elbow before she could trip. "No harm done," he said, deep voice smooth and unbothered. "You all right?" Francesca looked up and froze. The man was tall, sharp-jawed, and had the kind of face you didn't forget. His dark blue suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his tie was so perfectly knotted it looked like it had been sculpted. "I'm good," she said, stepping back quickly. "Didn't see you there," he smiled, but it wasn't smug, just amused. "You're here for the fundraiser preview?" he asked, clearly already knowing the answer. "Yeah, my boss is organizing it. I'm just checking the venue." "Francesca Foster," she added, extending her hand. He hesitated for just a second, like her name meant something to him, but then shook her hand. "Elias Archer." The name didn't ring any bells until he gestured to the space behind him. "My family owns the estate. I'm managing the renovations personally." Of course. Of course, the man she nearly body-checked was the millionaire owner of this palace. "I didn't realize I'd be meeting the owner," Francesca said, trying to sound professional and not like she was panicking. He tilted his head. "I didn't realize I'd be this interested in a site visit." Francesca blinked. "Sorry." "Nothing," Elias said, easy. "Want the tour?" She hesitated. "I was just going to take a few photos and write a report. And I could give you the full picture," he said, walking toward the staircase and glancing back. "Unless you're scared of a little luxury," her pride kicked in fast. "Lead the way." As they walked through the estate, Elias explained the history of each room, the imported Italian marble, the restored French tapestries, the chandelier that had once hung in a Parisian opera house. It should have been pretentious, but somehow it wasn't. "You actually sound like you care about this place," Francesca said as they stepped into a sunroom bathed in golden light. "I do," Elias said, leaning against the doorway. "It's been in my family for generations. My grandfather nearly sold it, but I bought it back last year." Francesca frowned. "So you're not just some rich guy who inherited everything," he laughed. "I did inherit some, but I built most of it myself. Investment firms, real estate, tech startups. I don't sit still." She crossed her arms. "Still sounds like a rich guy." He grinned. "Touché." For a moment, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was charged. "I should probably get going," Francesca said, checking her phone. "I've got 2 more venues to visit today." "Cancel them," Elias said casually. She blinked. "What? You've already seen the best one." "Why waste your time?" Her mouth opened. "I'm not the one making the final call." "But your boss trusts your opinion, right?" Francesca narrowed her eyes. "How do you know that?" "I Googled her before this meeting. Vivienne Fuller, no nonsense, big on control, rarely shows up herself. Sends her best people instead." Francesca almost laughed. "So you think I'm her best?" "I know you are," Elias said simply. "It was too much, too smooth, too fast." "I should go," she said, heading toward the entryway. He followed. "Let me walk you out." As they stepped into the driveway, a black vintage convertible sat parked out front. Her jaw dropped. "Is that yours?" "I have a thing for classics," Elias said, tossing the keys in the air. "Want a ride back to the city?" She shook her head. "I don't get into cars with strangers." "Then let's not be strangers. Dinner with me tonight." She stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I know your name. I know you're smart. I know you don't pretend to be impressed. That's rare." Francesca hesitated. Elias leaned in slightly, voice softer now. "Say yes." She wanted to say no. She really, really did, but something in his eyes, something steady, warm, and totally unshaken, made her nod. "Fine, 1 dinner," he grinned. "I'll pick you up at 7. That night, Francesca stood in front of her mirror, second-guessing every outfit she owned. When a sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment, she grabbed her coat and rushed down. Elias stepped out of the car and opened the door for her. "You look incredible," she blushed, fighting a smile. "You clean up okay yourself." The restaurant he took her to was tucked away on a rooftop in Midtown. No sign, no crowd, just candlelight, city lights, and soft music. "I didn't even know this place existed," she said as they were seated. "Most people don't," Elias said. "That's why it's my favorite." Over wine and fresh pasta they talked. About childhood, she was raised in Brooklyn by her grandmother after her parents passed. He was raised in Connecticut, private schools, tutors, success shoved at him like a burden. And yet, they laughed like they'd known each other longer than a few hours. As dessert came, Francesca looked up and said, "This doesn't feel real." "What doesn't? You, this, all of it." Elias leaned forward. His voice was quiet now. "It's real for me." She looked away, overwhelmed by his intensity. "You don't have to believe it yet," he added, "but I'll prove it." Francesca met his gaze, and for the first time in a long time she thought maybe, just maybe, she was in trouble. Francesca arrived at the office the next morning with exactly 3 hours of sleep and the lingering scent of lemon verbena on her wrist. Elias had walked her home after dinner, hands in his coat pockets, his questions more curious than calculated. She hadn't expected to talk about her college thesis, or the time she got lost in Rome and ended up drinking espresso with a retired opera singer, but that's where the night went. And now here she was, bleary-eyed, trying to focus on Vivienne's voice during the weekly logistics meeting. Vivienne snapped her fingers. "Francesca, are you with us?" She sat straighter. "Yes, sorry, just reviewing the Bellamy notes." Vivienne studied her for a beat. "Was Archer there?" Francesca blinked. "Yes, he gave me the tour himself." Vivienne raised a brow. "That's unusual." "He's notoriously hard to pin down in person." "He said he was managing the renovations himself," Francesca answered, keeping her tone even. Vivienne tapped her pen against the table. "That estate is already booked for a private gala next month. I want access to their event staff roster by end of day and find out who's managing the guest list for that gala. I want names." Francesca nodded. "Understood." The meeting moved on, but her thoughts didn't. She hadn't told Vivienne about the dinner. And she certainly wasn't going to explain how Elias had insisted on walking her the last 4 blocks on foot, just so they could keep talking. By lunchtime, her inbox was overflowing, her coffee was cold, and her phone vibrated with a call from an unknown number. "Francesca Foster speaking. Is this a bad time?" Elias's voice was calm, and for some reason it made her pulse jump. "I'm at work," she said, glancing at the conference room where Vivienne was still talking with the finance team. "Then I'll make it quick." "I want to see you again," she exhaled slowly. "You don't waste time, do you?" "I don't like wasting chances," Elias replied. "Meet me for an early dinner. 5 o'clock, I'll send a car." "You realize normal people are still working at 5, I've checked." "Your calendar's blocked after 4:30. Francesca's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" "I know a guy," she shook her head. "You're impossible, but effective. I'll see you at 5. The call ended before she could argue. At exactly 4:45, a matte silver SUV pulled up outside her office building. The driver, dressed in a sharply tailored jacket, opened the door and greeted her by name. They drove across town past neighborhoods she didn't frequent unless she was working an event. When they stopped, she stepped out in front of a tall, discreet building with no signage. The doorman nodded and let her in without asking anything. Inside, the lobby was quiet, dimly lit with modern art installations and the subtle scent of bergamot in the air. A woman in all black led her to an elevator and pressed the top floor button without a word. When the doors opened, Francesca stepped into a glass-walled space with panoramic views of Manhattan. The entire floor had been transformed into a private dining area, plush seating, a long oak table set for 2, and a chef plating something delicate and aromatic behind an open kitchen counter. Elias appeared beside her, sleeves rolled up, no jacket, no tie. "You're here," he said. "I almost didn't come, but you did." She looked around. "You rented an entire penthouse for dinner." "It's mine," Elias said easily. I use it when I want to be above the noise. Francesca raised a brow. You have multiple places. He poured her a glass of wine. 4, technically. This one's the least complicated. She sat, eyeing him. You're not trying to impress me, are you? If I were, I'd have gone flashier. I just wanted quiet. The chef served them a course of seared scallops with citrus foam. Francesca tried not to let her surprise show. She'd never eaten anything with foam before. Elias took a bite, then leaned back. You're not overwhelmed by any of this. I'm not sure I have time to be, she replied. I'm still trying to figure out what you want from me. He studied her. What makes you think I want something? Men like you usually don't show up without an angle. Men like me, he echoed. Rich, sharp, always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Is that how you see me? I see a man who doesn't hear no very often. He smiled faintly. You're not wrong. But not for the reasons you think. She set her fork down. Then explain it to me. I've been surrounded by people who say yes to everything because they think they'll get something out of it. You didn't. You told me I was too much. You didn't pretend to be impressed. And you weren't afraid to challenge me. Francesca folded her arms. So I'm a novelty? No, Elias said, his voice softer now. You make me feel like I'm not performing. She didn't know what to say to that. After dinner, they stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the sun set behind the skyline. The city looked like it was dipped in gold. I've never seen it from this high up, Francesca said. I used to stare out this window and feel like I had to own everything I saw. And now I just want to share it with someone who doesn't care whether I own it or not. She turned to look at him. I don't want a fairy tale, Elias. I'm not offering one. He stepped closer. I'm offering real. A knock interrupted them. Elias opened the door to reveal a sharply dressed man holding a leather folder. Sorry to intrude. The final roster for the gala next month. Francesca's ears perked up. Elias took the folder and flipped it open, scanning the names. I thought I told you to remove the Donovans from this list. They're still listed as primary sponsors. I'll speak with their team again. Do more than speak. Cut the check yourself if you have to. I don't want their name attached. The man nodded and left. Francesca glanced at him. That was intense. They're not people I associate with anymore. Why not? He paused. Because they remind me of who I was before I knew what mattered. She didn't press further. When he turned to her again, his expression had shifted, more guarded, still open. I want to see you again. Not just dinner, not just penthouses. I don't know where this is going, Francesca said honestly. I do, Elias said, and I'm not going anywhere. She didn't answer. But when he walked her to the elevator, she didn't stop him from brushing his fingers over hers before the doors closed. Francesca stood in front of her open closet, staring at the rows of clothes that suddenly all looked like they belonged to someone else. There was nothing in there that seemed right for the kind of life Elias Archer existed in. Not the simple cotton blouses, not the practical skirts, and certainly not the cardigan she'd worn to last month's museum benefit. But she wasn't going to buy a new wardrobe because a man with a private elevator thought she was interesting. She wasn't that girl, not anymore. Her phone rang. Vivienne, Francesca, I just received a call from the Bellamy Estates coordinator. Apparently you're listed as a guest for the gala next Saturday. Francesca stopped mid-motion. I didn't confirm anything. Well, someone did. Your name is on the formal list and it's coming directly from Archer's office. You care to explain? I think he added me without asking. Vivienne's voice flattened. Then you'd better find out why, and if this is turning into something personal, I need to know. I won't have my lead compromised by a man playing games. I understand. Vivienne hung up. Francesca pressed her palms against the edge of her kitchen counter. She hadn't expected Elias to pull her into his world like this. And she certainly hadn't expected him to blur the lines between personal and professional without warning. By the time she reached the Bellamy estate 2 days later for a scheduled walk through, she was prepared. He wasn't going to charm her out of asking hard questions. Elias was already in the main hall, dressed in a navy button-down and rolled sleeves, pacing in front of a long table covered in linen samples and floral mock-ups. You're early, he said, glancing at his watch. I had questions, she replied, setting her tote on the table. Starting with why I'm on the guest list for your gala. I wanted you there. You should have asked. You would have said no. Francesca crossed her arms. You don't get to make those decisions for me. Elias met her gaze. You being there isn't about a favor. It's about wanting you in my world, with me. I'm not a chess piece you can move around when it suits your plans. I don't see you as a piece. I see you as someone I want standing beside me when it matters. She paused. Then maybe start by asking. He nodded once. You're right. I should have. Francesca looked down at the floral mock-ups. What's this? Centerpiece options. I'm hosting the gala for the Archer Foundation's anniversary, 10 years. And I thought you didn't sit still. He smiled, but it was different from before. Smaller. Real. The foundation funds education grants for first-generation college students. My mother started it before she passed. Her tone softened slightly. I didn't know that. I don't talk about it often. You should. Elias's expression shifted, thoughtful. You're always surprising me. Because I don't fit into the world you're used to. Because you don't try to. Francesca sat down on one of the velvet chairs. This event, it matters to you, it does. And you want me there, I do. She looked up at him. Then I'll come. But only if I'm not being used to prove something. You're not, she nodded. Then we'll consider this your first official request. Elias stepped closer. Can I make a second one? That depends. Have dinner with me again, but not rooftop dinners or private chefs. Just something normal, define normal. Plastic forks. No dress code, maybe a booth with uneven legs. She arched a brow. You don't strike me as the greasy diner type. I wasn't, but I'm starting to think I've missed a lot of things that matter. Francesca stood. Then I'll take you to one. But only if you're paying in cash. That might be a problem, she laughed. Then I'll cover it. Just to see your face when the waitress asks if you want fries with your burger. Later that evening, they sat in a tiny fluorescent-lit diner near Union Square, surrounded by peeling menus and the smell of burnt coffee. Elias looked completely out of place in his tailored coat and polished shoes, but he didn't complain when the waitress handed him a chipped mug. This feels like a different planet, he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. But it's not bad. Francesca dipped a fry into ketchup. You've really never done this, once, in college. I spilled mustard on a borrowed jacket and spent the rest of the night hiding it, she grinned. Sounds traumatic, more like humbling. They fell into an easy rhythm, talking about strange jobs. They'd had hers as a barista at a bookstore cafe, his as a summer intern at a corporate law firm he walked out of after 3 weeks. I thought about going to law school, Elias said, pushing his empty plate aside. But I knew I'd hate it. My father didn't care, he just wanted me to follow orders. Francesca leaned on her elbow, and you don't do that, not anymore. But back then, I didn't know who I was without those expectations. She nodded slowly. I get that, he tilted his head. You do? My grandmother raised me to be practical, responsible, always earning, never expecting. That's why you never ask for anything. She looked down. I don't like feeling like I owe anyone. I'm not asking for something you can't give. Francesca looked back at him. So what are you asking for? Elias's voice dropped quieter. Time, a real chance. She didn't answer right away, then she slid her coffee cup toward him. You going to finish that? He smiled. It's all yours. As they stepped out into the chilly night, Elias walked beside her, his hands in his coat pockets. No drivers, no sleek cars, just the crunch of gravel beneath their steps. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking about if this is a good idea, and I haven't decided yet. They stopped at the edge of the park, city lights stretching out in every direction. Elias turned toward her. I'm not going to pretend this is simple. I don't know what this becomes. But I know I don't want to stop figuring it out. Francesca met his gaze, steady. Then don't stop. She didn't let him walk her home that night, but she did give him a look over her shoulder before disappearing into the subway station, one that said this wasn't over, and Elias. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was chasing something. He felt like he'd just found someone worth waiting for. Francesca adjusted the strap of her satin clutch as she stepped out of the car, the cool night air brushing against her bare shoulders. The gala was already in full swing, the Bellamy estate glowing with hundreds of lights and guests dressed in polished elegance. Music drifted out through the open doors, a soft string quartet playing something sweeping and romantic. She hadn't told Elias she was coming. Part of her didn't trust that if she gave him too much space in her life, he wouldn't take all of it. But another part, the part that hadn't stopped thinking about the way he'd looked at her outside, that diner wanted him to see that she hadn't run. A valet gestured her up the marble steps. Inside, the space was transformed. The floral options she'd seen earlier now burst into full arrangements, towering over the tables with delicate precision. Guests mingled beneath the chandeliers, laughter rising between flutes of champagne and slow turns on the dance floor. Francesca paused near the entrance, scanning the room. She didn't have to look far. Elias stood at the center of it all, deep in conversation with a city councilwoman and a man in a silver tuxedo. He wore black this time, no tie, just an open collar and a look of complete ease. But the moment his eyes found hers, every bit of polished charm vanished. His shoulders straightened and he moved toward her, ignoring the people still talking. "You came," he said, stopping just in front of her. "I said I would. You didn't say when. I figured you'd like the suspense." He looked at her differently now, not just with interest, but something quieter. "You look like you don't belong to anyone's world but your own." Was that meant to be a compliment? "It's the highest one I know." Francesca smiled, just slightly. "You clean up all right." "I was hoping you'd say that." One of the servers passed with a tray of champagne. Elias took 2 glasses, handing her one. "I should warn you," she said, watching the bubbles rise. "I don't dance at these things, not unless there's a very strong reason." "Understood," he said, sipping. "Then I'll just talk to you instead." They moved to a quieter corner of the ballroom, near the terrace doors. Outside, the city sparkled below the estate's hilltop perch. Francesca leaned against the open frame, her fingers trailing the edge of the glass. "Your mother would have been proud of this," she said. Elias didn't respond right away. She wanted to build something that would last longer than her, something that made people feel seen. "You've done that," he looked at her. "I'm trying. You're succeeding." He stepped closer, but not too close. "Does this feel like my world to you? This," she gestured toward the glittering crowd. "This feels like a world that doesn't touch the ground." "And what about me?" She hesitated. "You've surprised me." "I want to keep doing that." Francesca set her glass down. "Then don't plan it, don't buy it, just mean it." "I do." They stood like that for a moment, no audience, no performance, just quiet understanding in the midst of a thunderously elegant night. Then a voice called from behind them. A man in his 60s, dressed in dark crimson, approached Elias. "Elias," he said, voice clipped and precise. "We need to discuss the Westbrook account. The projections are off by nearly 15%. "Not now," Elias said, not looking away from Francesca. The man frowned. "It can't wait." "Yes, it can," Elias said, sharper now, "and it will." Francesca turned slightly. "You're really going to ignore a 15% projection issue? For you?" "Yes," the man blinked, clearly unused to being dismissed. "We'll talk in the morning." Elias didn't answer. The man walked away. "Was that a terrible business decision?" Francesca asked. "Maybe," Elias replied. "But I've spent years making the right decisions for the wrong reasons. I don't want to live that way anymore." She studied him. "You're changing." "I have to." Francesca reached up, brushing a speck of lint from his collar. "Then maybe I'll keep watching." Elias stepped forward, slow and deliberate, until there was nothing between them but breath and tension. "I know you're used to people wanting things from you," he said. "But I don't want anything you're not ready to give. I don't want to be another distraction in your empire. You're the only thing that's made it feel like more than an empire." Her heart twisted, not with fear, but with the kind of clarity that only arrived when everything else fell away. "Then dance with me," she said. Elias blinked. "I thought you didn't dance at these things." "I said I needed a strong reason. I hope I qualify. You're getting warmer." He extended a hand. Francesca took it. They moved onto the floor, the music swelling around them. He didn't lead with arrogance or overconfidence. He moved with care, with attention, with the kind of grace that came not from money but from wanting to get it right. Guests turned to watch. Whispers floated behind them, but Francesca didn't care. She hadn't come for them. Halfway through the song, Elias leaned in, his lips just above her ear. I've been in rooms filled with power my entire life, but this is the only moment I've ever felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be." She didn't look up. Instead, she whispered, "You're not the only one." After the dancing, they stepped outside. The air was colder now, but neither of them moved to go back in. Elias took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders without asking. "I want more than this night," he said. "I want the in-between moments, the mornings, the arguments, the parts that don't come with chandeliers or champagne." Francesca held the lapels of the jacket closed. "I'm not perfect, I know. I don't come with a trust fund or a polished resume. Or a last name people recognize." Elias cupped her face, tender and firm. "I don't want perfect, I want real, and you, Francesca, you're the most real thing I've ever touched." She leaned in, forehead against his. "I believe you." When their lips met, it wasn't staged or performative. It wasn't about timing or optics or audience. It was two people who had spent their lives guarded, finally letting go. The next morning, Francesca woke up to the sound of a knock on her apartment door. She opened it to find a small envelope resting on the mat. No label. No card. Inside was a single key on a silver chain. Attached to it was a slip of paper with one sentence. "Come see what forever looks like with me." She pressed the key to her chest, eyes stinging. And for the first time in years, Francesca Foster didn't feel like she had to make herself smaller to fit into someone else's world, because Elias Archer had built one big enough to hold them both. The key Elias had left on Francesca's doorstep led to a brownstone tucked away on a quiet tree-lined block in the West Village. Not towering or ostentatious, but elegant in a timeless way, like it had stories to tell. And when she stepped inside, using the key with trembling fingers, she realized it wasn't just a house. It was a beginning. The first thing she noticed was the warmth. Not from the polished wood floors or the fireplace flickering gently in the corner, but from the photographs, framed shots of the Archer Foundation's earliest scholarship recipients. A candid image of Elias with his late mother, and in the hallway, a picture of Francesca at the Bellamy Gala. She hadn't even known it had been taken. She stood in profile, looking out onto the city, a soft light catching in her eyes. Footsteps padded down the stairs. Elias appeared, barefoot in dark sweats and a t-shirt, hair damp like he'd just stepped out of the shower. "I was hoping you'd come. You gave me a key to a place I didn't know existed," she said, shutting the door behind her. "That's a bold move. I didn't want it to be just a gesture, I wanted it to be an invitation." Francesca set her bag down slowly. "You live here. I bought it a few years ago but never moved in. It felt unfinished." He met her eyes. "It only started to feel like something real after I met you." She walked through the space, fingers trailing across the edge of a low bookshelf filled with worn hardbacks and architectural journals. There was no trace of the cold minimalism she'd seen in his penthouse. This was curated comfort, deep colors, vintage furniture, a record player humming low in the corner. "You renovated this, every inch. I wanted it to feel like a home, not a showroom." "Why now?" "Because I can't keep living in places that echo. I want to build something that holds people." "That holds you?" She turned to face him. "You've said a lot of things, Elias, but I need to know what this really is, what you want." He stepped closer, not with intensity, but with certainty. "I want you. I want mornings with burnt toast and missed alarms. I want to argue about what color the curtains should be. I want to hold your hand when things get messy, because they will, but I'll choose you every time." Francesca blinked, breath catching. "I've spent years trying to build something from the ground up. I didn't think I'd ever fit into someone else's life." "You're not fitting into mine," Elias said quietly. "We're building one together." She nodded slowly, the truth of it settling deep in her chest. "All right," she said. "Then let's start." Over the next few weeks, the rhythm between them shifted from possibility to permanence. Francesca kept her job with Vivienne, but she no longer doubted where her evenings would end. Elias adjusted his travel schedule, rarely leaving the city unless she could come with him. They learned the little things, how she needed silence in the mornings before coffee, how he handled stress by reorganizing the kitchen drawers, how neither of them could agree on the right temperature for the thermostat. They hosted their first dinner in the brownstone on a rain-soaked Friday. Francesca cooked, Elias set the table. Their guests were a mix of foundation staff, old friends, and unexpectedly, Vivienne. As the evening wound down, Vivienne pulled Francesca aside. "I misjudged him," she said, glancing toward Elias, who was laughing at something one of the interns had said. "He's not who I thought he was." "No, he's not," Francesca said, "and I'm glad." Vivienne sipped her wine. "You're different too, in a good way." "I feel different. Keep him sharp," Vivienne said. "Men like that need women who challenge them." "I plan to." Later that night, long after the last guest had left and the candles had burned low, Francesca stood barefoot in the kitchen, washing dishes while Elias dried them beside her. "This was a good day," he said. "They usually are when you're not ordering table linens by email at 2 in the morning. He nudged her shoulder gently. "I only did that once. Twice." He leaned against the counter, towel slung over his shoulder. "What do you think about doing this again? Dinner?" "No." "Life," she turned to face him. "With you, always with me." Francesca reached for his hand, resting it against her cheek. "Then yes." 6 months later, they stood beneath a canopy of ivy and soft lights in the courtyard of the Bellamy estate where it had all begun. But this time, the air buzzed not with tension, but joy. Francesca wore a simple ivory dress, her hair pinned with delicate gold leaves. Elias stood in a tailored navy suit, his eyes locked on her like she was the only person in the world. Their vows were quiet, spoken not for the crowd but for each other. And when Elias said, "I built empires to fill a silence I didn't understand until I met you," her hands trembled in his. After the ceremony, they danced barefoot on the marble floor, just the two of them, as the guests moved inside for dinner. Elias pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You know," she whispered, "you never did tell me what you thought forever looked like." He looked down at her, eyes warm. "I didn't know," he said, "until you walked into that ballroom in Flats and told me I was too much." She laughed softly, resting her head on his chest. "Turns out," he added, "too much was exactly enough." And with the moon high above them, the music drifting through the open doors, and everything that had once felt impossible now unfolding right in front of them, Francesca and Elias danced into the life they had built together. One of messy mornings, shared dreams, and a love that didn't just survive the world they came from, it rewrote it. Completely.